As we begin this new year, the Finance Committee wishes each of you a year unlike any other, one that is full of new dreams, journeys, and wonderful memories just waiting to be discovered. Welcome to today's Treasurer's Talk. We are pleased that you have an interest in the topic budgeting. My name is Diana Haskell. It is an honor to serve as the chair of the Finance Committee with a remarkable team of members. I am the Ohio State Organization treasurer, and I also am the Gamma Phi president. A state president that I know used to say, "It's a new year, let's try a new way." Well, today, the Finance Committee will provide a few ideas for your consideration regarding budgeting that may appear to be a new way. I'd like to introduce our team. We could go to the next slide. Mary Whitten.
So I'm Mary Whitten from Maine, and I've served as the state president, finance committee chair, and currently I'm an assistant treasurer for the state. So
Dr.
Dr.
Diane.
It's me. Hi, Dr. Diane Anderson. I am from Tennessee, and I serve as the Tennessee State Treasurer, and also I am my Gamma Alpha chapter president. So, as just like Diane, I have multiple hats.
Thank you. Janice?
Hi, I'm Janice Barr. My chapter is in California, Zeta Iota in the Northwest Coast. I'm a past California State President, member of the International Finance Committee, and we're glad to have you all with us today.
Thank you. Liz?
I'm Liz Van Westenberg from Michigan. I am a former state president, current state treasurer and chapter treasurer, and also the treasurer of our state organization's educational foundation. And I thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Dr. Beverly is not with us this morning. We did see her a few minutes ago, and she is tending to her mother. And we wish her mother well. And Beverly sends her greetings to all of you. Lucinda.
Hello, I am Lucinda Hart, your executive director based in Austin, Texas. And I want to thank all of you for your support and dedication and service to DKG.
Thank you, Lucinda.
If we can do the next slide. So just a reminder that this session is being recorded and will be available on Chapter and State Connect. The chat is being monitored, so if you have questions or you have any suggestions for future Treasurers Talks, please post those there and we will get to those at the end of our presentation. Also, if you would please make sure you mute your microphone so we don't have any excess noise on the outside that will interrupt what we're doing. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy. So next slide.
An important document in any organization or group is the strategic plan. And International has asked each committee to examine the part of the strategic plan for the society that applies to their particular tasks. And so the Finance Committee, in order to meet and support financial needs of the society and our individual members, and create new resources and information, we will continue to offer our Treasurers Talks, a way to share all sorts of ideas and tidbits with our DKG leaders.
Thank you. Next slide,
please.
Our agenda includes how do we mitigate risk, some preparation tips for the budget, some new ways of thinking about the available fund revenue and how it is prepared, ideas on how to prepare the available fund expenses, and then what does that preparation look like versus the presentation that you might make. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to talk about how to mitigate risk. So there are several ways that we recommend, that International recommends, that you mitigate risk using liability insurance. And so the first one is directors and officers liability insurance. The next one is the state officer auto travel insurance. The next one is the state treasurer's dishonesty bond, and that one is very important. Usually you hear it just as a bond, but it is, if you try to Google it, you would need to use dishonesty bond, really. And the last one is state chapter and state event venue insurance. And you might not have to have that, but we're going to talk about that as well. Next slide. So the first one is direct officers and directors liability insurance. And who needs it? Your state organizations need it. Very few chapters need this because it protects the organization from lawsuits resulting from mismanagement, misrepresentation, dissemination of false or misleading information, or inappropriate actions. So if one of your officers something that is misleading and costs somebody money, or it does things that are going to hurt them financially, they might sue, and this will protect every officer or director in your organization. So it's very good for state organizations. I really would not probably recommend it for chapters, but if your chapter is very large or has a lot of money and your officers are not cognizant of what they promise, then this might be something you want to consider. But for the most part, it should be state organizations. Next slide. The next one, state officer auto travel liability insurance. Again, this is state officers as they travel around the state. It covers state organization officers when they travel on society business. So it would be a supplemental policy to your private insurance, and it does provide, it doesn't provide auto insurance, but rather insurance for harm to your person or whatever. It's a per day cost. So you figure out how many days all the officers or the people that you're going to list. You can list committee chairs, area directors, whoever you list, and how many days they're going to travel on society business. And then it's a per day cost for that. It's very, very low cost. Next slide. So the bonding of the state treasurer is very important. Chapter state organizations should have this, and governing documents require that they have this. And then chapters, if you have a lot of money, the treasurer's handing a great deal of money, they need to have this, and it protects you from the treasurer's embezzling funds from the chapter or the state. And it is very important. And I even know that even when I get people to work in my school, they're bonded. And you want these people to be bonded because it does protect you from them like getting all your money in. And I have had organizations at our school that have stolen from them, and the state comptroller had to come in. It's really, anyway, but I do recommend you have this, and the international says you shall be bonded. So if you're a state treasurer, you should be bonded. And that is the first thing that I pay on July 1. Next slide. Event venue liability insurance is when it's required by a place that you're going to meet. So if you are meeting at a college or a high school or a church, or even anyway, so you have, this protects them from being liable for somebody falling and suing them for a loose, whatever, stair rail. So, you can go on and get the bonding insurance, the event insurance, and it will, like, I have to tell the company who I am who the event is with, and then they send me a separate form, and they can use that as well. I think it's possible for your chapters to use the state one if the state will coordinate. So you have to plan a little in advance so that you would know that this company, in other words, we have our convention at a college called the University of the South. It's called Swanee, and I add Swanee every year, and they just add their name at the bottom, and I give it to them, and they know that they're covered. So that's how I do that. All right, so next. So for costs, you want to hear this is my state, and directors and officers insurance. It came from AIM, which is association something, I don't know, anyway, it's who Delta Kappa Gamma recommend, or DKG recommended. It is $65 for $1 million coverage. The state officer travel insurance was 36 cents per day per officer, and we got that from Boone Chapman, again, another DKG sponsor. So both of those were very inexpensive. The bonding insurance for Tennessee, I pay $125 per year, and I get that from Liberty Mutual. It was the insurance that the treasurer before me had, and I've been treasurer for 7 years. So we've had this policy for quite a while. I don't know but it never goes up. I get a bill and I pay that on July 1 every year. As soon as I get the budget ready, that's first, because it's very important that I have that one. The event liability insurance is $104 per year. And again, I pay that through AIM, and it is just really easy to work with them. I email them and say, here's my college name and address. Would you please add them to the bottom? Our chapter trainings at high schools, I send them the chapter trainings, the high school names. They add them. I send that to the high schools. So it's very easy to do those. Next slide. And if you have any questions about that, I'll answer those at the end, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Diane. Janice, budget preparation tips.
You need to study the past to predict the future. State treasurer, and it's flexible. It might vary a little bit from state to state, but basically is saying the state treasurer and or the finance committee chair start the process. When they have a draft, that goes to the finance committee. And from the finance committee, it goes to the executive officers of your state, and then on to your executive board for the final approval. Committees make requests to the finance committee. In other words, they say, we need such and such amount of money for the following year. And so that is looked at by the committee and assessed, and they come up with the final amount. Budget drafts are flexible documents. They have that ability to be changed until you get to the executive board voting. Know and adhere to governing documents, because each state may be a little bit different. A balanced budget may be required by the governing documents, and if that's so, then you need to certainly adhere to that. Next slide, please. Spreadsheet examples will be shown a little bit later in the program, but you're going to be entering revenue and expenditures in each budget line using your June 30th data into a working draft. The Finance Committee determines the amounts for the new budget. Acquired approval or approvals according to your governing document will then be done. The 2025 DKG Society Handbook, pages 12 to 13, has budgeting information and an example. Next slide.
Now we'll take a moment and look at revenue or income. Revenue sources and the size of those revenues, of course, vary with each organization, whether it's a state organization or a chapter, but can generally be packaged or included in possibly 4 different categories that we will look at in a moment. These are simply suggestions, of course. You may have a different way to group your revenue in your budget, so do what works best for your particular organization. The revenue categories here in this slide and the next reflect the groupings that are listed in the IRS 990 that many chapters and state organizations file each year with the IRS. We're not speaking about the 990N, that's slightly different. But these categories are the ones that are included and request information when you file your 990. Using these categories in your budget may make it easier to file your 990 if you have to do so. The first of the 4 categories we're going to look at is dues, membership dues. And as you know, all dues are collected by chapter treasurers. With one exception, state treasurers may collect dues for members if they have state chapters. But typically it's the chapter treasurers who collect those dues. They're posted on the dues portal and then sent along to the appropriate state organization and on to the international. Chapter dues are retained by the chapter's treasury. And in some cases, a chapter may choose not to collect chapter dues if they have other funding, maybe grants, maybe bequests, that they have other funding available to support the activities of their chapter. But I believe most chapters do have some sort of chapter dues that they do collect. Dues at each level are specified by the unit's governing documents, and dues for each are going to be included in the budget created for that organization. So the chapter treasurer and the chapter finance committee will do the budget, including chapter dues. Your state organization treasurer and finance committee will create a budget that reflects the use and the collection of state dues. The second category is the big one, program service. This may, in many situations, reflect a large portion of your budget. These monies fund the mission, the vision, and the purposes of DKG. The purpose of DKG is to offer events and provide services to individual members and various groups within the organization. And of course, these events need funding. State organizations, chapters, and international all offer programs and services, although they vary by the level. But things like conventions, conferences, training sessions, arts weekends, legislative retreats, speakers and presenters events generally bring in registration fees and possibly meals charges. These are all definitely revenue and need to be reported as such. If an event is funded by a grant, that money is still considered revenue and does need to be reported. The second bullet, program services, talks about state organization leadership training, commonly called SALT. When that happens, when that occurs, and that's every other year, International offers training for state organizations leadership. International then sends money to each state organization who was represented at training. You had to be there to get the money. And the treasurer of that particular state organization disperses the money to the attendees of the training. This is done based on the guidelines of that particular state organization's governing documents. But SALT money that's received by the state organization is indeed considered revenue. Some states and chapters may charge a scholarship fee, or maybe a sunshine fee for flowers and memorials and things. Those are considered to be revenue. Grants and charges for meals or materials are also income from the organization and do need to be considered revenue. Next slide, please. The other two categories, general categories, and again, you can change this up based on your organization's needs, are non-dues revenue and investment revenue. Non-dues revenue is just exactly that. It's money that comes in from other sources other than dues from members, and that pretty much helps run your organization, the day-to-day operations of your organization. Funds that are not directly specified for programs or events and training are also non-dues income. Donations, for example, if members or chapters or groups make donations to your organization, those are non-dues revenue. Your state organization or your chapter may also have a credit card that earns points or rewards, so that brings in money or revenue. You might sell pins or DKG clothing, greeting cards, pens and pencils, luggage tags, etc., to supplement your state's income. The items may be sold at state events or chapter events, but please be sure to check the society and state organizations' governing documents and your geographic state guidelines, like Michigan or California or Texas, for rules on income, taxes, and reporting of that money. But the money that comes in from those sales is considered revenue. Another non-dues source is, for example, if you have a chapter, sadly, that dissolves within your state organization. Any money remaining in that chapter's account when they dissolve must be sent along to your state organization treasury. The fourth big general category we're looking at is for investments or investment income. If your chapter or state organization has investments, there's income or revenue generated by interest, dividends, money made when the market goes up, or if a loss if it goes down. Your advisor likely charges fees for managing your money. This income and expenses may be really difficult to predict based on the budget or based on the market and things. It's difficult to predict and budget, but it does need to be reported. Next slide, please. This is a sample of a chapter budget draft in the making. You may want to take a look at this more closely when you go back and look at the recorded treasurer's talk. But this is just a sample, and your chapter's line items may certainly differ from these, and your setup might be different. But this is a very interesting one. It lists the line items such as dues and program services, meals, mystery baskets, things like that that can bring in income. There's a column for in this case, the 24-25 money that was budgeted, the final amount at the end of that fiscal year, and then the difference between the two is calculated. It might be positive, it might be negative, depending on how things went. There are also three other columns to the right that are looking ahead to the 25-26 budget and the 25-26 amounts to date. It helps you keep track of how much money is being spent in each one of those categories, or in this case, how much money is coming in for your revenue. And then the blue titled column is the numbers that you're considering proposing for your next fiscal year. And you can go back and look at all the other data in this budget draft to help you make those decisions. Next slide, please. This is virtually the same thing, but for a state organization budget. So, for example, the dues columns are maybe different. We've got collegiate members, we've got program services, similar in setup, but you could use this as a sample to develop a state budget draft that you can work with. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Liz. That was a very comprehensive look at money coming into the chapter, money coming into the state organizations. Just like a checkbook, money that comes in typically goes out. And in this case, we're going to take a look at excuse me, were you finished, Liz? And I did not.
Yes, I was. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So the available fund expenses, much like a checkbook, you have money coming in, deposits. All money that is entered as revenue is typically deposited. None is in a petty cash account or in a slush fund. It's all deposited. And then money going out are listed as expenses. And in the budget process, the available fund is the only fund at both the chapter and state levels that require a budget. So the expenses in this case are organized for your consideration in three big bundles. And we use these kind of bundles to help us categorize and organize our thinking around our expenses. So the first big category is what we think of as the management and general expenses, which are often termed operating expenses in the non-for-profit world. So what is an operating expense versus a program expense versus a fundraising expense or any other expense? Think of an operating expense, a management and general expense, as one in which any not-for-profit would incur. Any not-for-profit will have bank charges. It has nothing to do with being Delta Kappa Gamma or being a homeowners association or being a charity. All organizations have bank charges and fees, and those would be part of your budgeting process at the operating level. Dr. Diane spent a wonderful group of minutes talking about risk. Your insurance costs all go here. The insurance protects the organization. It's a management and general expense. Office supplies are going to be listed and can be thought of in two groups. What are the office supplies that typically would be around paper, toner, in some cases, some other filing, etc., would be operational and would not necessarily have anything to do with the program. All of your accounting fees, if you pay for a CPA to do the 990, if you pay for a CPA to do a review, if you pay for a CPA to advise you, all of those kind of accounting fees belong in operating because, again, they do not relate to the program, they relate to the operation of the organization. If you are a building owner or if you have taxes that you must pay, if you have insurance that you must pay, if you have maintenance that you must pay on your real estate, those again are operating expenses, and not every state, and certainly most chapters, do not have real estate expenses. We're listing them here as a way to give you some ideas on how you might frame a new way of looking at your budget. A second category is, and Liz spent a wonderful amount of time talking about what is a program, what is program revenue, and program expenses really have the same question. What expenses are we incurring at the organizational level that meet the mission, the vision, and the purposes of Delta Kappa Gamma? What are those? So they could be meeting expenses, if you have to pay for room fees, etc. It could be if you hire a webmaster, if you hire an editor, if your treasurer receives a salary or income, if your executive secretary does. Those salaries, taxes, and filing fees could be included in program, could also be included in part in operating. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. All of your committee expenses, whether they are society, program of work, society mission and purposes, all of your committee expenses are germane to Delta Kappa Gamma and would be bundled in the program. the leadership training dollars that are spent to reimburse members to attend training, whether they're at the chapter level, at the state level, are listed here. Some postage and supplies, especially those that relate specific to the work of the organization. If you mail out newsletters, if you have printing fees, if you have postage and other supplies that are germane to the program, they might be considered to be listed here. Reimbursements following whatever policy is in place in your chapter or state are also listed here. If you pay for a speaker, if you have event expenses, executive board expenses, meeting expenses, training expenses, etc., are all germane to program and would be bundled under a category thought of as program. Another source of expenses, money going out the door, would be supplies, merchandise, any fees, any expenses related specific to fundraising. And again, I caution every state to be well aware of what are your state regulations around fundraising. They differ by state and they are managed by your attorney general. So make sure that you're fundraising within the group of acceptable fundraising practices as prescribed by the laws in your state. So if we think about these three, these are three big bundles. And as I think about the 990, which is filed by every state organization and some chapters if they're large enough, the first page of your 990 asks for revenue, and lines 8 through 12 are revenue lines on the 990, and expense lines on the 990 are lines 13 through 19. And those are then itemized and enumerated more definitively in IRS Part 9 for expenses and Part 8 for revenue. So if you want to take a look at your 990, go back and take a backwards look at your 990 state organizations and chapters that file a 990, you might be able to see how your CPA or how your accountant bundled your expenses, and that may give you a window to the future, the way you might consider a new way of looking at your budget. And let's take a look, just as we did in the next slide, at what does a draft of expenses look like. So again, I did not include in this the wonderful categories that Liz did of looking at the past, previous budget, 2020, in this case, 24-25 budget, against the final 24-25 actuals, which would be listed, and then the difference, and then of course going forward to 25-26, what did you budget? What are the to-date expenses, and then your proposal. But this is just looking at taking those operating, program, and fundraising expenses and considering how you might bundle them. And again, just a way of looking at expenses in categories so that it is a little easier to think about them. And then in the future, how do you present this budget? Because right now we're still working at it. So as you can see, those same areas that we had talked about previously at the chapter level may include these kind of operating expenses. You may change operating expenses chapters to membership expenses. In other words, member-driven expenses. This is what we must do to do this. But again, this is just a sample. It's a way of looking at it. We'll do the same thing at the state in the next slide. If we could have the next slide, please. In this case, of course, the state budgets are pages and pages and pages and pages. And what we've done here is we've taken a look at those expenses, again, in three categories: operating, program, and fundraising. And we've listed all of ways that, we might think about how do we operate? What are all of those lines? And you'll notice that they've got a little color coding to them. So in lines 11 through 14 in operating, for example, all of those bundle or kind of come together in a way that makes some sense. The travel 15 through 17 kind of come together. This is mitigating risk in a way that might make some sense. Again, samples, a way of looking at operating expenses, a way of looking at program expenses, again, bundled with color. So for the future, so that as we think about presentation, we might think about those differently. And fundraising expenses, again, they're not bundled, but they're kind of itemized. Let's take a look at the next slide, which Mary is going to
Yes.
take a look at.
So one of the things we wanted to point out to you in this session is that if you can list every single line for your executive board or whomever votes on your budget, but you don't have to. And so part of the color coding, and this is just an example, is you can collapse the committees, and that was the example we have here. If you have these committees on your report out for your presentation of your budget, you can just say committees with your total dollar amount. But your governing documents are going to be the guidance for that, for sure. And you need the details for preparing your numbers, but when you report it out, you don't necessarily have to have every single one of those lines. And that's the point we wanted to make here. And as an example, the international organization does the same thing. So if we could go to the next slide. So Diana and I went to Texas 2 years ago to work on the international budget, and we had pages and pages and pages of documentation that we worked from. This is an example of the document that went to the executive board who voted on the biennium budget that was presented at that point in time. So they did not, International even takes these pages and puts it into a quickly easy to read and figure out what's being spent and what's being taken in for revenue, for sure. So just be aware that you don't have to print every single line for everybody to vote on. You can collapse those things. So if we could go to the next slide, and I believe Janice.
We have a few reminders for you. After January 1st, treasurers need to contact international headquarters before you submit the dues order for any new member. Form 16 was due in December, so if you haven't submitted it, please do so as soon as you possibly can. Next slide, please. Chapter contributions to DKG IEF should not be mailed with a dues order. Please complete a separate DKG IEF contribution form indicating the specific fund to be supported by the contribution. Contribution checks are made payable to DKG IEF, not international or your state. Make sure that happens. Let your individuals know. Changing financial institutions, you need to contact Bill Staples at headquarters requesting a required authorization letter before making the changes. Bill's most helpful, so don't hesitate. Chapter treasurers collect member dues prior to July 1. Complete and submit a chapter dues order for the 26-27 dues early in July. DKG forms are updated often, so always access forms from the dkg.org to use the current version. Don't just save it to your laptop, because we do look at them each year. Coming soon, these are topics that we will be sharing with you. Setting up a DKG State Foundation, updated Forms 15, report of chapter treasurer's autofill, updated Form 16, report of the state treasurer, developing state GAAP documents, and accounting software options. And remember, if you have a topic that you are interested in, be sure and contact the committee and we will look into it for you. Next slide.
Our next treasurer's talk is scheduled for Saturday, April the 18th, 2026, at the same time, 10 a.m. to 11 U.S. Central Time. We look forward to your ideas, your topics, as well as those that you have already told us that you'd like for us to deal with. We hope that the information presented was informative, food for thought, maybe a new way of looking at the budget, a new way of looking at risk, and some reminders that are just helpful to share at both the state levels with your officers and at the chapter levels. We're happy to entertain questions, and we'll ask Mary Whitten to do two things for us. One, present the question, and two, Mary, if you could maybe assign one of the committee members to respond to the question. Unless that committee member's not comfortable, then one of us will take over. But would you mind doing that, Mary?
Nope, I'll try to do my best.
Thank you.
Two jobs at the same time on a Saturday. So
All
the
right.
first group of questions around insurance. So I think I'm going to throw those to Dr. Diane first.
Perfect.
And so one of them was, where can we find reasonable bonding insurance? Another one was, where can we get insurances? So Dr. Diane, do you want to just quickly read that?
Well, I have had the bonding insurance from Liberty Mutual for a long time. Before I became treasurer, that's where it was. It was a local agency in East Tennessee, and I live in West Tennessee. So, but anyway, it's still, I just send the money to Liberty Mutual. It was $125 for our bonding. I would think that if you have to file a 990, somebody asked, at what point do you think a chapter would have a lot of money? If you have to file a 990, which means your chapter made over $50,000 this year, then you probably need to be bonded. And so that would, to me, that would be if you can file a 990N, which means you did not make over $50,000, then I would think that would be where you need to be. You're probably okay with the, not being bonded, but if you made over $50,000, I would think you need to find and like I said, this was a local agent in East Tennessee, and he got the bond for us. I have no idea why, but it's just always been at Liberty Mutual. You can call them. You can call a local agent. You can call their whatever and see if you could find it for a similar price. That's all I can tell you. I never had to bid it or look at any other. It's just always been there. So that's how that's how we've been bonded in the past.
Okay.
For the others, AIM is the association. I don't know. I just read it. Lucinda posted the name.
Lucinda did post the link to AIM in the chat. So if people are looking for it, they
Right.
can
So
go.
if you look for AIM, that's where the directors and officers insurance came from, as well as the event insurance. And yes, somebody asked if we use that at high school. We use it at everywhere we go as a state. But Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, California is using that for chapters, like chapters can use it.
Yeah, we do.
So chapters can use it too. If the state has it, you just have to add the name. And it's, like I said, nothing to add that name. It takes about 5 minutes. And let's see, what other question did I see?
So it wanted to know who basically does the chapter pay for the bonding insurance, I'm assuming, versus the treasurer. So who pays for that?
Yes. Well, the state pays for it. The chapter would pay for it. If they have $50,000 in income, they can afford to pay for the bonding.
For sure. So I just want to kind of clarify the event insurance. So what California does is they have it, they buy it as a state. And it's my understanding that as an event occurs, whether it's at the state level or the chapter level, they can add that event to their list of events. And I think Tennessee talked about also as they go through the year, if they need to add an event, they can add an event to their liability.
Well, I don't ever tell them the event. I tell them the name of
Location.
the place, the location of the event,
Okay.
I guess.
It's just the
That's
location.
right, because that's what somebody would sue if there
Okay.
was a problem.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so one of the questions was, and I think this might be a question maybe for Lucinda, where are the DKG sponsors listed on the website, and how does DKG get sponsors?
So that I want to clarify because so we don't have sponsors like sponsoring DKG. We have we do have collaborations and partnerships, like for example the DKG store with Award Concepts and stuff like that. Those are partnerships that we entered with. The administrative board is the one that approves those. And some of them are just continuing. Insurance would be the other one. Now, the sponsors for, say, our conference or convention, those would be listed on the event websites, and typically those are in the programs as well. And at the event, we'll put the logos as well. And those also are approved by the administrative board. So for the ones that I mentioned, like the insurance and some of the like AIM, we talked about AIM, Boone Chapman, a lot of those, Colette. Again, I don't consider those sponsors because those are agreements, collaborations that we went into with those companies. Colette Tours, there's going to be in different areas of the website. A lot of them are going to be under the members section, the member benefits section, which I think is under about. Let me log in real quick. Sorry, membership and then benefits. And there's going to be, the travel, networking, discounts. It's all going to be kind of in those areas. So it's going to be in different areas of the website.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question for, I think, Diana. I'm going to send it to you, and if you can't answer it, we'll go from there. But the question came from Pamela Aubin. When do you need to have us post our state dues, such as active, reserved, collegiate, for each new dues collection?
So I'm going to review the question again with you, Mary.
It says, when do you need to have us post our state dues, such as active, reserved, collegiate, for each new dues collection? That was the exact question.
So
if we need clarification, we can ask her to.
I would ask the author to just clarify, because every time a new member joins the organization, the dues should be posted. But if you're asking for periods, for half price dues and things like that, we can go over that. But I'll ask the author to restate the question.
It was Pamela Aubin, so if she wants to unmute and can clarify her question. Is she still in here?
Hi, I
Thank you,
posted that
Pamela.
question. To clarify, I wanted to know, we had an issue last year where collegiate dues was not posted, but the president had agreed for the new collegiate members, she had a group of 8 and she paid for them out of her own pocket as an incentive for them to join. So when we were looking at our it was not posted how much we were charging, and it was agreed back in 2019. It was in the minutes that we charged reserve members $8 from the state for the state fees, and the collegiate members would be the same, $8. So it worked out that because she paid that, and but it was not listed as part of our state dues. So I wanted to know if there's a change, when is the best time to inform DKG for the dues portal and whatnot?
Correct. That's a great question. So I believe every year, state treasurers get a request for what are the dues at each level. And if they remain the same, that's fine. If there's a change, regardless of active, reserve, collegiate, or any other new membership group that may come in the future, you're always asked annually, and usually before the dues portal reopens
Okay.
in the spring.
All
So the dues portal will be open usually until the 28th day or 29th day of February. March 1st, it tends to close, typically for the month of March, reopens early in April or April the 1st. So during that period is when states need to inform, or usually are asked, what is the new dues structure at your state level?
Okay. Thank you.
Is that the clarifying?
Yes.
Does that clarify? Thank you so much for the question. Great question.
It is. Okay, so this next question, I'm not sure who this goes to. The question is, what is crowdsourcing, and would a chapter have to file a 990 if they use crowd? Two different people asked questions, but I put them together. So would a chapter have to file a 990 if they use crowdsourcing? So I
It
think
depends on, as Dr. Diane said, the 990 is governed by, at the United States level, governed by the IRS. And that's the only group that the United States treasurers need to be concerned with. But at the chapter level, once you reach $50,000 in revenue, you must file a 990. You no longer can file a 990N. And that continues until you do not raise that much revenue. So, I believe it can be averaged over 3 years. But again, once you hit that threshold, I would turn my book and my question over to an authority on that, which would be an accountant. I would not fool around with the IRS. I would follow their rules. And if that means filing a 990 versus an N, that's when you know that things have dramatically changed at your chapter level or your state level.
And the question about what is crowdsourcing? So crowdsourcing, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is where you reach out to a group of people and ask them to make a donation. Is that anybody have a different definition of what that is? Okay, guess not. So I'm thinking like when people, not PayPal, what is it?
Venmo.
Venmo. Well,
Venmo.
I was thinking, anyway, when they reach out because somebody's had a fire and they want people to donate to help them get back on their feet, that kind of thing is an example of crowdsourcing. Okay. So a couple of questions came. It asked if the slides would be posted and if the sample budgets would be posted. We can post the sample budget for sure in the state treasurer's part of Basecamp. It's a spreadsheet that can be posted later. For sure, I can do that later today because I have that on my computer. And do we usually post the slides? I know we post the video, but do we usually post the slides, Diana?
We usually post the recording, which
The
includes
recording,
the
but
slides.
not the slides.
But
Okay.
the slides are part of the recording.
Right.
If there's a need for something, reach out. We're happy to share, but the recording
Post it
will be
on there.
posted in both State Connect, Chapter Connect, following, I think, just the tech team cleaning it up a little bit or making sure that everything is accurate that we've said.
Okay, so this is a revenue question, so I'm going to throw it to you, Diana. Is there a minimum dollar amount that's considered revenue, or is it all reported to the IRS? Actually, there's several questions about expenses here.
Okay. Is revenue, should Liz handle the revenue question?
Yep, sorry, Liz would be revenue. Sorry.
Liz, we can't hear you, sweetie.
Sorry. My thought is when you're dealing with the IRS, I would report everything. Now, chances of your having revenue that's 7 cents is probably not going to happen. And it might be possible to legitimately bundle really, really small revenue with another one in the same category. But again, dealing with the IRS, I would not, I would report everything. That's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Expenses,
I would
Diana.
also, could I also add that uh, treasurers monthly would be reconciling their bank statements
Mhm.
against checks that are written and deposits that are made. So monthly, it would make sense to me that the chapter treasurer would be reconciling the book on every financial account from
Mhm.
credit card expenses and revenue that comes in, deposits that are made, and expenses in check form that go out. So that reconciliation process is very critical and it keeps you on track. It also enables you to provide a report, a statement of financial activity to your members, to your board, to whomever you're expected to do that to. And then, of course, the final year-long statement of financial position, as well as the statement of financial activity, is really what your CPA uses to generate your 990 if you need to generate a 990.
Okay, so a couple of expense questions, Diana. Website expenses, are they an operating or program or both? And then postage, are they operating or program expenses or both?
Can be both. And again, I think all you need to do is determine sort of whatever the criteria that your team, your finance committee team, will use to generate them. And I'll give you a quick example, and I don't mean to muddy the water, but it's just the way in which you kind of have to think. So CPA in Ohio says to me, you spend about, and I receive a salary for doing my work as the treasurer, which means I pay payroll taxes and blah, 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 and state taxes. The CPA said to me, you spend about 25% of your time doing operational work. In other words, reconciling, getting reports ready for the IRS, etc., and about 75% of your time on program expenses. So I'm going to divide your payroll into two groups. 25% of the payroll for your treasurer's salary is going to operating. 75 is going to programming. The criteria that he used was based upon a question. What are you doing? Who is benefiting? Is it an operational expense in that the postage and supplies are applicable to any organization, regardless of whether it's the Little League baseball team, not for profit in your in your community, or Delta Kappa Gamma? If it's anyone would be making that expense, it would be an operating expense, any not-for-profit. If it is germane to Delta Kappa Gamma, we have to do it because it's a part of our mission, vision, and purposes, then that's kind of bundled as program. But again, create some criteria. Just have a question that you keep asking about it. And they can be split.
Okay.
They don't have to be one or the other.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I see it's 12 o'clock.
It is, there are a couple more questions, if you want to go for a couple more minutes, but one was, no, if somebody doesn't have a building, the permanent fund that they've had before, does that go into the available fund and you budget for, and you obviously include that in the budgeting? And
So that's a great question. And this whole question of the reserve fund is not a budgeted item.
Mm-mm.
The reserve fund is an asset. It's part of your asset group and it's part of your position statement. When you spend it, it goes into the expenses.
Okay, great. So a couple last.
And we're going to have a session on that. We're going to have a
Yes,
session
we
on
will.
that.
So it says, do international documents require bonding for all chapters or just those who make over $50,000? My understanding is the only thing international requires bonding for is for state
Mhm.
treasurers. A chapter may wish to bond if they have a large amount of money, $50,000 or more. And so I believe that's that. And then it says, is the $50,000 revenue each year or what the chapter has at the end of the fiscal year? Liz, I'm going to turn that one over to you.
It is revenue. So the
Revenue.
$50,000, that's the threshold between the 990N and doing a 990 is actual revenue, money that you brought in. Now, there is a caveat that if it's money that goes through your account but is sent to another part of the organization, it's not necessarily part of the 50,000. For example, as you're collecting the dues, if you as a chapter treasurer are collecting the dues from your members, and you're sending that money to the state organization and the international. If the money is then being sent on to international as for international dues, please correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but you do not have to count that as your revenue. You are just the funnel for moving those funds legitimately to international dues. But the $50,000 cap or guideline between 990s and 990Ns is revenue. It's not your bottom line.
Okay. And the last one I see, it says our chapter partners with local community organizations that help to fund and takes in the income for that project. Does this income expense need to be listed on the budget or can it stay invisible? Does it have to be added to the total revenue for the IRS? So Liz, I'm going to turn it over to you because it sounds similar to what you were just talking about.
That is a super question. It really is. I mean, my first thought is if the community organization is the one handling the money, and everyone else step in and correct me if you disagree with me. If they are the ones handling the money and they are collecting the funds that will be used to help you with one of your projects, the way I see it, the money that they collect and then pass to you for a project, to me would appear to be a donation from that community group to your chapter or your state organization. So I'm thinking, and I may be totally off base here, I'm thinking it would be as a donation coming from the community organization to your chapter or state project. I see it as a donation, and donations truly are revenue.
Revenue. Mm-hmm.
And that was the last question I see. So we are done, I believe.
So,
Good.
new year, new way of thinking, a new way of maybe just giving your budget a fresh look. Thank you for joining us this morning. We wish you continued great success in 2026. Reach out to any member of the Finance Committee with any question that you have, and we look forward to our April meeting where our group of topics, I hope, will also be as inspirational. I think questions drive inspiration. They tell us, okay, you've caused us to think about something. So thank you for your great questions, your topic ideas. I'll wave goodbye and ask the rest of the team to wave goodbye. And thank you for joining us this morning.
Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.